Hey, it's Educator Barnes, and welcome back to another book talk. So, as some of you guys know, I am in a book club with my younger sister. She's about 2.5 years younger than I am. At the beginning of 2022, we decided to start reading books together. Our current book that we decided to read was You Should See Me in a Crown. This book is by Leah Johnson, and I absolutely loved it. I cannot stop singing its praises. First of all, the story takes place in Indiana, and it centers Liz Lighty. She is the protagonist. She is the underdog that you root for, and she is a queer Black teen, and she is struggling to find her place. And even though I do not identify as a queer person, there were so many aspects about living in Indiana as a person who is a nerd, because Liz Lighty is definitely a blurred. And if you don't know what a blurred is, that's a person who is Black, who is also a nerd. She's the top of her class. She's an overachiever, which is something I can relate to. So when she was describing high school and what life was like, I was like, oh my gosh, this is how I felt growing up here in Indiana. And then there's so many references to her going to downtown Indianapolis. They mentioned the Arts Garden and going to Steak and Shake and going to Ritter's, and it's some of the different things. So there's not very many novels that I have read where the setting is Indiana. So I absolutely loved that. But I also loved the essence of the story of finding who you are, because I was a middle school English teacher for years, and I absolutely love YA books, young adult literature. I read it all the time with my students, loved it. And this is one of the best YA books I have read, and I don't say that lightly. The narration of how they brought all the characters to life, I thought there was adequate character development, and it was a story that was really about self-development, because I have read quite a few books that center queer protagonists, but the story is really so much about that. It's not about like the person developing as a whole. That's just an aspect of who the character is. So I really appreciated that you understood her life, being, she's growing up with her grandparents due to a tragedy that happened in her family. You're understanding what it's like for her being Black. You're understanding what it's like for her being a Black person that has overachieved in band. You're understanding what it is like for her being in a school where you have a white student who is in a competition with her, and she's not competing with this white student. That whole aspect of the book, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have as a Black female, I will tell you, you learn the hard way that that whole competition, like the only person that Black women compete with, we compete with ourselves. We are not competing with anybody else. But then you have these white females who are in this competition with you. They're trying to trump you. Like, for what? Because like the only person I'm trying to beat is Shantae Barnes. I'm not trying to beat anybody else. And so I just really appreciate that coming through. And even though there were some aspects that really painted Indiana and its culture in not the best light, there was this redeeming quality of the youth saying, like, no, we can make Indiana different. We can be different. We can change the tide. So if you're looking for a solid, well-written story by a Black author about the youth experience in high school, because it centers her running for prom because she thought she was going to get the scholarship that she didn't get, and winning prom queen will get her the scholarship. And there's all this other stuff that goes with it. So it's really, there's multiple layers of situations that happens. If you want to read a book with a solid plot, with well-developed characters, I really suggest you read this book. And side note, there is a Billie Eilish song called You Should See Me in a Crown. And there are some of the themes that are in that song that I'm like, okay, I see that in this book. So I highly recommend this book. You should see Me in a Crown by Leah Johnson. And I believe it was Time magazine that noted that this is like one of their top 100 books of all time. And this book has numerous recognitions, but it was a well-written book. And if you watch these videos, you probably have not seen me at this animated. I really liked it enough that I would read it again. And there's not many books that get that status for me where it will get a reread. So check it out, easy read. And I can't remember her name. It was Alaska. I think it was Alaska Jackson. Please, if I got that wrong, I'm so sorry. But the woman who narrated the audiobook, she did a phenomenal job. I really felt like I heard the voice of Liz Lighty, our protagonist. And I always note the audiobooks when I read audiobooks because sometimes audiobooks are like womp womp, but this one was pretty solid. So check out You Should See Me in the Crown by Leah Johnson, and once you read it, let me know what you think in the comments. And stay tuned for my next book talk.